Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mouth of the Tyne podcast, brought to you by the Shields Gazette. I'm Dominic Scurr, joined by Joe Buck to discuss all the latest news surrounding Newcastle United. The transfer news is hotting up. The players are back for pre-season. Plenty to talk about, Joe.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind last couple of days, hasn't it? It's been sort of a quietish summer. Obviously, we had Sandro Tonali joining, and then it sort of went quiet for a few days. But once the Gateshead game got on the way Saturday, and then Rangers, it's been all go on all fronts, hasn't it? So yeah, I'm excited to talk about all the recent updates at Newcastle.
Yeah, and big update, big story today. Sandro Tonali, Harvey Barnes, sorry, will follow Sandro Tonali through the door as Newcastle United's third summer signing, second major summer signing, if you like. He's currently, as we speak, at the training ground for his medical, following a £38 million agreement with Leicester City for the winger. Joe, what do you make of Harvey Barnes set to be a Newcastle player, obviously with the caveat of Allan Saint Maximin going to Saudi Arabia?
I think it's a brilliant deal. It's funny because most of the early summer was dominated with James Maddison. Obviously, he was linked with Newcastle, and obviously he goes to Tottenham. I think Barnes went under the radar as almost the whole of last year, really, because James Maddison got the headlines everywhere. He went almost at Leicester, but 13 goals last season and a team that went down, from left wing is a brilliant haul. And I think that you look at that, you just look at the basic stats. It's a good deal. He's 25, so he'll be coming into his prime very soon. English, which obviously helps the registration rules, also knows the Premier League. There's no risk of him not being able to adapt or anything like that. I think on paper it's a great deal, and for me, he seems very much an Eddie Howe type of winger. He will press, he'll do all of the stuff that Eddie Howe wants him to do off the ball, but he's also very good in front of goal. Then stats last season show that, and along with Almiron on the right wing, hopefully there's some goals from out wide for Newcastle this year.
Yeah, it certainly seems a sensible sign. And when you look at the statistics, I mean, the statistics don't tell the full story, but Harvey Barnes, I think, in the Premier League, 60 goal involvements, goals and assists combined. These are sort of numbers that just Newcastle wingers can't really compete with. And this is at a Leicester side. Okay, they've been at the right end of the Premier League for the majority, but as you say, suffered relegation last season.
Yeah, it's when we may as well talk about Saint Maximin now. We're going to be, I'm sure his name will crop up. But when you just look at the basic, comparisons between Saint Maximin and Barnes, it's a no-brainer really. Which one you might, you would rely on for goals and assists? Yes, Saint Maximin is probably more flashy and easier on the eye than maybe Harvey Barnes might be. But in terms of pure numbers and what we expect to happen next season, Harvey Barnes is like is the one that you would think the Newcastle would plump for, and hopefully he's almost, I wouldn't say he's guaranteed goals because we could be talking about this in 6 months' time and he hasn't scored. But right now he does seem like someone who will guarantee goals at the club.
Yeah, and Saint Maximin, he'll depart with. I think a lot of Newcastle fans will be sad to see him leave. I think he's certainly been a bright spark in what have been previously dark times for Newcastle, and as the team sort of evolved and improved around him, he sort of faded into the background slightly, which for the type of player he is, probably just didn't suit him. So it's one of those moves. I think Al Ali going to the Saudi Pro League, playing regularly. Obviously, the financial benefits of that. I think it's just a deal that makes sense for everyone. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I do. I think St. Maximin's almost at the wrong place at the wrong time. I think he's in that little bit of a sweet spot of Newcastle. Probably won't miss his output too much next year, but he's also someone that they can get a bit of money for, and someone that will be relatively easier to sell. And it's a shame because, as you mentioned, I think for at least 2.5 years, he was probably the only reason to watch Newcastle at times. He was the one. Even now, when he picks up the ball, you still get the edge of your seat and you think he could do anything here. And maybe that won't have that next year with some of the options. But I think, as one goal in the Premier League last year, and obviously that came back in August. Brilliant goal, got to add, but it's not someone that Newcastle will miss too much. And if you can get 20 million for him, obviously get his wages off the books as well, it's a deal that Newcastle really have to look into. And I know we always talk about financial fair play. I think we're bored of talking about it, but he's someone that, with them financial fair play constraints, if you can get him off if he can sell him now for money, it frees up Newcastle to do a lot more this summer. And as I said, I think for Saint Maximin, it's just the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, that's what Eddie Howe was saying. The Saint Maximin deal. Eddie Howe very rarely gives much away on transfers, but the fact he gave quite a bit away after the Rangers game on Tuesday night was telling. But the suggestion from him was this potential sale, imminent sale, you could say, is just going to free Newcastle up a lot more. It's allowed them to bring in Sandro Tonali, for example, allow them to bring in Harvey Barnes and potentially explore some more options in the transfer window as well. So I think it's a sale that had to happen. St. Maximin, we've always said, is Newcastle's most saleable asset in terms of is he that important to the first team? Probably not. In the same way, someone like Bruno definitely is. Sven Botman, Alexander Isak, players like that certainly are who you could sell for a lot of money. But Allan Saint Maximin, you can get a decent chunk for. I'd say it's probably the first major sale PIF have done since taking over the club, because Chris Wood and John Joe Shelby pretty much weren't really first team players or regulars at the point they were sold. So Saint Maximin, you'll be a miss, but I think it's a sensible deal done by the club and should certainly on paper statistically improve Newcastle United, even though, like you say, they do lose a bit of that edge of your seat flair, which as Newcastle fans watching Newcastle as reporters, you do love, and you will be a miss for that. But how do you think in maybe 10, 15 years, history will look back on St. Maximin at Newcastle United?
I think I've seen a lot of fans on social media talk, it's easy comparisons with Ben Arfa, Rebed, sort of French mercurial left wingers. I think that he probably will go down maybe a little bit more. I don't know. It's probably recency bias. For me, he was better than Ben Arfa from someone who watch M2 regularly. For me, I would never got on board with Ben Arfa. I'm not gonna lie, but St. Maximin was always that thing where you always felt you could do something. As I said, I think the comparison between how excited I was to watch him and how unenthusiastic about watching Newcastle at all during those couple of years, really sets him apart. It is going to be a big shame to see him go. He's as Newcastle progress on the next few years, and if they get to where we hope and think they can get to, he will be looked back fondly because he did help keep Newcastle in the Premier League, which of course led to the sale, which of course led to where we are now. But I think the one thing I would say is fans and as journalists cover, we do have to get used to players leaving the club. It's under Mike Ashley, it never really happened. We saw with Kabay back in the day, but they never really had these assets to sell. But now they're getting these type of players in. You mentioned Bruno and Isak. I'm not saying Newcastle are going to sell them for 1 minute very soon, but they're the type of players where Real Madrid, Barcelona, they're the types of teams that are going to come sniffing around at some point. And they've just got to accept that players do want to leave. Players will want to leave, and the club will have to cash in on these at times. So it's going to be a shame to see St. Maximin gone and not at the club next year. But as we've said for the last few minutes, it's probably the right move at the right time.
Yeah, I think that Ben Arfa comparison is an interesting one. I'd probably agree with you. I think Ben Arfa, in terms of just raw quality and end product, was probably superior to St. Maximin, but dribbling in terms of pace, being explosive, St. Maximin probably edges it. And I'd argue Ben Arfa was playing in a much better side than what St. Maximin was. So St. Maximin very much the bright spark at a dark time for Newcastle. So I think history will look back on his time at the club very kindly, and I think I'll go and speak. I could speak for all fans in saying thank you, Alan, for your service to Newcastle United, because you played a big part in getting the club to where they are today. And where Newcastle are today is in America. But on Tuesday night, before jetting off to the United States, they played Rangers at Ibrox, a 2-1 win. Goals from Miguel Almiron and Harrison Ashby. 2 wins from 2 in pre-season. Joe, what were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, it was good. It was a good run out. Yeah, against Rangers, who I'm not gonna lie, I expected more from Rangers. I know it was a pre-season. I thought there might be a little bit more of a test. Newcastle, dominate, especially in that first half. They were all over Rangers. But I was really impressed with Sandro Tonali. I thought he was excellent. I love it when a player just gets involved, and he seemed to get want to be involved with everything they did. He's similar to Bruno in that mold for me. He wants to be on the ball. He wants to be tackling. He wants, he's not afraid to put in a tackle. So I thought he was really good in his first game. Almiron, well, the pass he did for Anderson to set up Almiron was brilliant, and then that finish by Almiron, I saw it back, and it's just the way he takes it. He just slots it. He doesn't put any power on it. Almost, he just puts it in the corner, and it was a great first half. Second half, they did slow down. Unsurprisingly, they didn't need to exert themselves. It was just a preseason game. The goal was a sloppy goal, but then to concede. But then right at the end, Isak again, just getting a bit of space on the left, finding a tiny little gap, putting that cross in, and it was a great finish by Ashby. So overall, it was a good run out, and it was good place to be at Ibrox. That was my first visit at Ibrox, and it was a different atmosphere, especially being testimonial and that. So it was probably something that Eddie Howe would have taken a lot from, and I think that going to America on the back of playing Gateshead and Rangers, will stand them in good stead to have 3 very competitive games against Premier League opposition.
Yeah, it was a good occasion, like you say, the testimonial, 8,000 away fans there. You obviously had a different perspective from me in the away end, but it felt like maybe not a direct comparison, but maybe a little preview of those European nights we're going to have next season in the Champions League. Did you feel that way watching it from the away end?
Yeah, it was. As I said, it was a different atmosphere because if it was an away game, but when you're being around, 8,000 other fans, it's almost a bit like a home game. But then with the pre-season vibes, but I think it was just a nice place to be in. And as you say, it sort of gave you a little vision of this could be Newcastle in a couple of months' time. There is a likelihood they can get Rangers and that would be a hell of a trip for anyone who gets to go to that one. So it is an exciting few months ahead for Newcastle. I think that the biggest thing was the fact that they came away with that game with no injuries, or no real injuries, and the fact that they can go to America with the pretty much full squad, other than Joe Linton, who will hopefully join in a couple of days, in a week's time. So yeah, it was a good run out for the team, and I was impressed by what I saw.
Yeah, Joe Linton yet to feature so far this pre-season. International duty and the extended break prevented him at Gateshead, and then at Rangers, visa issue, delay getting his visa has stopped him from travelling with the rest of the squad to the United States. No update on that initially, from the club at least, but the hope is that he'll join the rest of the squad in the United States for the Premier League Summer Series, which will see them face Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Brighton. But just on the Rangers game and the Gateshead game to a degree, yeah, we've seen Newcastle 90 minutes. They've played twice now. We've seen a lot of players involved, a lot of young lads. Is there anyone who has particularly impressed you? You mentioned Sandro Tonali, but anyone other than that who you're liking the look of in the early stages of pre-season?
I think for me it was good to see Elliot Anderson and Lewis Miley, them two in particular, get a fair amount of game time. We've seen Anderson in bits over last season, and Miley obviously right at the end of the season against Chelsea. But it was nice to see them two, playing major roles. And I think they're going to have not a major role to play this year, because I don't expect them to be starting week in, week out. But with all these games coming up, they're going to have to be relied on. It was good to see them. They didn't look out of place at all. Obviously, Elliot Anderson's more cuts on the first team, but especially Lewis Miley, he looked very solid in that middle of that park. I've seen a lot of praise for Alex Murphy as well. He's played well in defence, so it's nice to see all these youngsters stepping up and and actually not looking out of place in this team, and giving Howe a couple of selection headaches, or even go. Eddie Howe knows in the future that he can rely on these players to come in and do a job for his team.
Yeah, I think Elliot Anderson, you make a good point. I got the assist for the opening goal at Rangers, and obviously scored at Gateshead over the weekend. So I think it's a big season ahead for him. I spoke to him after the Gateshead game, and he said he's not. He wants to be part of the first team. He knows what he needs to do to get regular starts. He only got a handful of starts last season. Majority of them coming in the cup, and he knows he needs more goals, more assists. He only got 1 assist last season, and that came on the final day at Chelsea. So he knows what he has to do. I think he does have an important role to play. He won't be leaving on loan, despite there'd be no shortage of interest if Newcastle were to make him available. But I think Lewis Miley's an interesting one as well. 17 years old, midfielder, and I think you're right. He's played twice now and not looked at all out of place, which is some going for such a young lad. And I think he's of that age now. He's almost maybe too young to go out on loan. I think it would benefit him to stay involved in Newcastle, given the 3 games a week for pretty much throughout the first half of the season. It would benefit to keep him involved and maybe use him in the Carabao Cup, things like that, and give him the odd run out in the Premier League. And obviously, he fits the homegrown quota as well for the Champions League as well. So, I think the young lads have largely impressed so far. I think Alex Murphy, like you say, is another one, and Harrison Ashby. First time we've really had a chance to look at him in a Newcastle shirt. Signed from West Ham in January, never really got a sniff. Named on the bench once or twice, but I think he brings a bit of pace, bit of energy. But he is one player. Um, his header was good too, but he is one player who realistically you could see going out on loan, depending on what happens with the likes of Javier Manquillo, Emil Kraft, who Manquillo could leave as well. But yeah, looking ahead, Newcastle currently in the United States, and would expect Harvey Barnes to join them out there. Joe Linton, hopefully, pending that visa. But after 2 good run-outs so far, this is sort of where the real pre-season starts for Newcastle, Joe, in terms of the up against Premier League opposition. We'll start to get a real feel. It's not just about fitness anymore. You want that quality to start shining through.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Especially with that game against Aston Villa, obviously with the first game of the season as well. That's going to be real. That's going to be real test. And you're right, you can't look too much into pre-season results. Newcastle might give you 5-0 the weekend, and it makes no difference. But I think that you do want to get some confidence going into the season. And as you say, there's no better teams to play really than 3 of the teams who are going to be challenging for Europe this year. There's no doubt about it that Aston Villa, Brighton, and Chelsea, who they're going to play in America, are all going to be in around those top sort of 6, 7, 8 positions. So it'll be a good test for Newcastle. It'll be one that it'll be interesting to see what Eddie Howe does. He obviously rotated, very heavily from Gateshead to Rangers, 6 or 7 subs at half time. So it'll be interesting to see what teams he puts out in them games and what sort of, if they give any indication of what his strongest team will be next year. Because I think we could probably sit here and name 7 or 8 players that we think will start that Aston Villa game in August. But there's probably 3 or 4 spots up for grabs, and that could be anyone's. And the best time to impress for these players to impress, who maybe aren't guaranteed a starting spot, is obviously against Aston Villa on Sunday, and then Chelsea and Brighton next week.
Yeah, definitely. And like we've touched on, Eddie Howe has brought over a couple of young lads too that we've mentioned before. So you'd expect would bolster the squad and potentially have an opportunity to break in as well. But yeah, there's probably, like you say, 3 or 4 first team starting positions up for grabs. I think Anthony Gordon's another player who has come back fresh and full of confidence from the Euros, winning player of the tournament, and it's a big season ahead for him as well. You're looking Saint Maximin leaving. Okay, Harvey Barnes is coming in, but it's a big one ahead for Anthony Gordon. A big season, and early signs, at least second half at Rangers, is he's a player full of confidence at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, he definitely looked like he'd sort of risen in confidence. Obviously, he had a fantastic Euros, but it was a little moment where he did that little step over in the box, and breezed past the defender, and you just look at that, and he probably wouldn't have tried that last year, or he might have tried it and got tackled, but he just seems like a new player this year, and it's great, and it's a great problem for Eddie Howe now to have, really. He's probably got, if he's going to play that 4-3-3, with 2 wingers and striker, he's probably got 4 or 5 players who want them 3 starting spots, left wing, right wing, up front. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with Gordon. You talked about, or Eddie Howe talked about, his versatility was a good thing for the club to have. So he definitely impressed me on Tuesday night, and someone that I think lots of fans are really excited to see how he gets on over the next few weeks and then in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, definitely. Big season ahead for him, and £45 million from Everton. There's a expectation, but he is still a young lad, only turned 22 earlier this year. So positive signs at least. Hopefully he can have a good season ahead for Newcastle. But talking about players coming and joining the squad in the United States, one player looking likely to leave the squad and fly back to England is Karl Darlow, close to agreeing a move to Bournemouth, Premier League club, staying in the Premier League. Newcastle obviously asking few £1 million for him, and looks like they've got it. So in terms of the goalkeeper situation, we needed a goalkeeper to leave, really, Joe. 5 senior goalkeepers on the books, and it looks like Karl Darlow is going to be at least the first one to leave.
Yeah, it's not really a surprise. I think, Darlow seemed to be the one that might leave, and he impressed at Hull last year in the second half of the season. It would be a shame to see him go. He's been a great servant since joining the club. Obviously, he went initially back on loan to Forest, but he's been brilliant. He'll always have them 2 penalty saves against Nottingham Forest. He's got a great chant, and to be fair, he was a brilliant understudy to Martin Dubravka when he got injured, a few seasons ago. So again, he'll go with nothing but fond memories. But yeah, 5 goalkeepers was too much. So it was interesting. I was surprised Karius signed a new deal. I thought he might have had some offers elsewhere, but it's clear that he's impressed during his time at the club. It's clear that the club have been impressed by him, and it just leaves Martin Dubravka's future really up in the air. He was obviously at Rangers. He seemed pretty with the group. I saw him at the end there. He was in the middle of the group. Obviously didn't feature, but he was there. So it'll be interesting to see his future. But I think Eddie Howe, much like you said, he wants 2 strong starting 11s, and that obviously means he wants 2 strong goalkeepers. And Nick Pope will be the number 1, and there's probably not many better number 2s than Martin Dubravka in the Premier League. Would you agree?
Yeah. I think Martin Dubravka is another one who falls into the category similar to Saint Maximin. He's helped during some of the darkest times and kept Newcastle in the Premier League almost single-handedly at times. So I think he's one who certainly has a legacy at Newcastle should he leave, and we've already, I guess, touched upon it this time last year, or at least September last year, just after he joined Manchester United on loan, when we all thought it was the end of his Newcastle career. But he's come back, and whether he leaves again, I think he's the type of player who will want first team football. He's probably so used to that in Newcastle to then lose it, and then Newcastle have the joint best defensive record in the Premier League. Nick Pope keeps so many clean sheets, is probably as much as it's good for the side, and as much as I'm sure he's happy for Nick Pope, it's probably dented his ego slightly, and he'll be potentially looking elsewhere, looking at options, because while he obviously speaks very highly of the club and Champions League football's an incentive, being one of 3-4 goalkeepers, Nick Pope's the clear first choice, but then after that it's him and Loris Karius. Whether you want to be involved in that, basically being a training goalkeeper when you're 34 years old, you're coming to the end of your career, I'm not sure. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Martin Dubravka leave, and I'm speculating here, but maybe that is part of the reason why Loris Karius agreed a new deal at the club, because maybe he's now the new second choice goalkeeper who will get the opportunities in the Carabao Cup, potential some European games as well. So we'll see how that unfolds. I'd be sad to see Martin Dubravka go as I was last summer, but ultimately it's that progress Newcastle have made, and it's not making the side any worse should he leave. So that's one potential outgoing I can see, and I'm sure we'll see a few more. The likes of Jeff Hendrick, Isaac Hayden, Ryan Fraser, players like that who Newcastle just simply need off the wage books to free up that financial fair play, which has restricted them quite a bit so far this summer. Eddie Howe spoke about it at length, and we need to get rid of players ultimately to free up that space in the transfer market, and wages are a big part of that. So we'll see how things unfold from here. We've got Harvey Barnes 1 foot through the door, more or less 2. We're looking. Tino Livramento is another one the club are keeping an eye on. I don't know what you think about him, Joe. He's looking like the most realistic next signing, but as we know, signings could sort of pop up from anywhere. But in terms of Livramento, a right back, considering Ashby, Emil Kraft, Kieran Trippier, obviously first choice, Javier Manquillo, is this a signing? If it's the reported 20-25 million, you'd want to see Newcastle do?
I think so. He seems like the ideal profile, really, for a Eddie Howe type side. Where they are right now. He's young, as you meant. Young. He's played in the Premier League before. Obviously, got a bad injury, which kept him out of action for about a year. So that'll be something that he has to overcome. But he showed everything at Southampton that he's got the makings to be a Premier League player. Obviously, was at the books at Chelsea, left for first team football as many do. So I think it's definitely someone that worth Newcastle going for, and with his sort of versatility playing right back and left back, that'll be really helpful as well. We've seen Trippier play left back, obviously still got Dan Burn and Matt Targett, so they can get 3 or 4 solid, 3 or 4 fullbacks there that Newcastle can rely on going into next year. We talk about this; they just need to add depth and quality to that squad. We mentioned it; the amount of games they're going to play, they need to keep adding, as I said, depth and quality. And Livramento is Premier League proven player. If he can get over his injury, £20 million for a player who's got at least 10, 15 years, hopefully at the top of the game, it should be a good deal. So I'm excited about that. And I think it's interesting to see the Newcastle signing Harvey Barnes and then maybe Livramento as well. It's very much a case of, trying to get these deals from relegated teams that they can do on, relatively cut price deals. So it's good. It's an exciting time to be, Newcastle fan and covering the club, and hopefully be an exciting transfer window between now and September. And before we know it, the games will come thick and fast, and there'll be games to report on transfers, and I'm sure it'll be a busy couple of months.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Livramento is probably will be viewed as, should he come in, the natural successor to Kieran Trippier, who's obviously he's 33 later this year. So in terms of both England and Newcastle, if he were to come in. So, and as a player who has been injured, probably won't mind so much being that substitute, not getting quite as many games as obviously Kieran Trippier and starting week in, week out. But we'll have more on that as it develops. We'll have coverage of Newcastle in the United States over the next week or so as well, where they play, as we say, Chelsea, Aston Villa and Brighton. So you can catch all that on the Shields Gazette website. You can also sign up to our latest newsletter to have all of the latest Newcastle United news delivered straight into your inbox. Just visit shieldsgazette.com/newsletter for more information on that. But for now, Joe, thanks as always for joining me on the Mouth of Tyne podcast, and thank you everyone for listening. Cheers.